The perfume I wore that day was one he used to love. Not too sweet, just a little jasmine with something warmer underneath. I sprayed it on the pulse points of my neck, hoping it would anchor me, somehow, in a moment I already suspected would unravel everything. It was my sister's wedding. A day I should have been present for, truly present. But from the second I zipped up my dress and pinned my hair, I could feel something inside me holding back. Like a breath you never fully exhale. My husband looked perfect, as always. He's the kind of man who can hold a room just by standing in it. People admire that kind of confidence. I used to. But lately, I'd started noticing the ways his presence shrank mine. We sat at the family table, just close enough to the action, just far enough to feel out of place. His hand rested on mine, but it wasn't warmth I felt, it was weight. A quiet pressure, like he was keeping me still. My sister danced with her new husband. The music was soft, full of violins and promises. I turned to say something sweet, something I don't even remember now, and that's when he leaned in. His lips brushed the side of my ear, and with the calmest cruelty, he whispered, "You're nothing without me." I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. The air between us turned into something solid. It pressed into my chest, heavy and cold. My hands were trembling beneath the table, but I pressed them down against the silk of my dress. Smiled. Nodded at someone who raised their glass. I felt like I'd left my body. Or maybe my body had left me. He went back to eating, casual, like he hadn't just carved something into me. The rest of the night moved around us, laughter, clinking glasses, the flicker of candles and camera flashes. But I was somewhere else entirely. Inside the memory of every moment he had chipped away at me without ever raising his voice. I thought of the time he joked that I should wear more makeup. The time he corrected my grammar in front of his friends. The time he said I didn't need my own bank account because we're a team. I thought of how I stopped painting, how I stopped writing, how I stopped speaking too much when we were out, just so he wouldn't get embarrassed. And I thought, when did I start needing his approval to exist? Later, when we danced, he held me close for the crowd. But I wasn't there. I was in the quiet hallway behind the venue, holding onto a paper towel I had used to blot my lipstick. I looked at myself in the mirror, not for beauty, but for signs of survival. My reflection didn't answer. I went back inside. Smiled again. Played the part. But something had shifted. That whisper, meant to keep me small, became the line I would cross. Not yet. Not tonight. But I knew it would come. He doesn't know that I started saving. That I have my own lawyer now. That the perfume I wore tonight was not for him, but for me. A reminder that I am still in here, somewhere. Somewhere strong. Somewhere waiting. After the wedding, the silence between us felt different. Not the usual quiet of routine or fatigue, this was the silence of something cracked, not yet broken, but no longer whole. He still kissed me goodbye before work. Still asked if I wanted coffee. But everything felt like choreography. Rehearsed. And I had stopped believing in our script. It was a Thursday morning when I decided to open his drawer. Not in a rush. Not in rage. I just stood there with my hand on the handle, listening to the soft hum of the shower in the background. My heart wasn't pounding. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. But my hands moved anyway. Receipts. Papers. A folded tie. A watch I hadn't seen in months. Then, behind a box of cufflinks, something that didn't belong, a second phone. Old, maybe, but charged. I turned it on, hands colder than the screen. No password. He never thought I'd look. The messages were there. All of them. Not just to one woman, but 3. Different names. Different cities. Different tones. One called him baby. Another called him sir. One said, "Can't wait for next weekend." My throat tightened. Not from surprise, but from the strange relief of knowing my intuition hadn't betrayed me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I was just right. The water stopped. I put everything back and closed the drawer slowly, quietly. I heard him humming, off-key, as always. I smiled at the absurdity of it. This man, humming in the shower, believing I was asleep, dreaming of him maybe. And me, already awake in 1,000 new ways. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Not yet. Instead, I started watching. He'd always told me I was too sensitive, that I overthought everything. So I decided to be quiet. Let him relax. Let him show me more. He did. He left clues like breadcrumbs, thinking I'd never follow them. Dinner receipts from cities he claimed to have passed through for work. A hotel keycard hidden in his car visor. A voice memo he must have forgotten to delete, her voice, laughing softly, saying his name. I started documenting everything. Photos. Dates. Screenshots. Even the lies he told me in real time, I wrote them down. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for truth. For clarity. I needed to see it written in my own hand. I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't crazy. He was betraying me with every breath. One night, while he was asleep, I stood by our bedroom window and whispered, "You really think I'll never leave, don't you?" He stirred, turned, and reached for me in his sleep. I didn't move. The next morning, I opened a new bank account. Quietly. In my name only. I started putting away pieces of myself, my documents, my family photos, the necklace my grandmother gave me. Not because I was leaving just yet, but because I wanted to be ready. He noticed I was quieter. He thought it meant I was softening again. Healing. Trusting. He even said one night, smiling, "You've been so sweet lately. I missed this version of you." I smiled back. Held his hand. But inside, I was building something. A new version of me. One he would never get to meet. The sound of silverware against porcelain has never unnerved me the way it did that night. He asked if I wanted to host a small dinner for some colleagues. Nothing formal, just close friends of his, he said, people I knew, people who didn't know me. I smiled and agreed. I'd already begun to smile a lot more. I'd realized something, men like him don't fear anger. They thrive on it. It gives them a role to play, the calm, reasonable one, against your overreaction. But silence? Silence makes them nervous. It's too quiet to control. Too still to anticipate. So I cooked. The wine was decanted hours before the guests arrived. I chose a dress he liked, navy blue, fitted, not too bold. He said it made me look soft but not too soft. I wore it like armor. The table was set for 8. He poured wine and laughed easily, touched my lower back in front of the guests. I smiled at his touch, just as I had when we were newly married. Only now, the smile wasn't out of affection. It was rehearsal. I was practicing how to let go without trembling. One of his friends toasted to partnerships that last. He raised his glass and looked at me. To my wife. My everything. My hand didn't flinch. I lifted my glass. To layers, I said softly. There's always more than what people see. They laughed. He didn't quite understand. I saw it in the tilt of his head. But he let it pass. Later, when the guests had left and the plates were stacked in the sink, he wrapped his arms around me from behind. Tonight felt like old times, he whispered, lips brushing my ear, the same way he had at the wedding, only now the words were different. I didn't answer. I just reached for the wine. In the days after, I met my lawyer again. A woman who never blinked when I told her the truth. She looked over my notes, my evidence, my plan. She nodded. When you file, it will be quiet, she said. But irreversible. I liked that word. Irreversible. I opened a post office box. Rerouted my credit card statements. I changed my emergency contact from him to my sister, without explaining why. She didn't ask. She just said, whatever this is. I'm here. Every move was small. Quiet. A breadcrumb trail in reverse, not leading to discovery, but escape. Then came the final rehearsal, a dinner with just us. No guests. Just wine, his favorite steak, and silence between courses. He thought it was a date. He told me I looked beautiful. He told me how proud he was of his recent promotion. How lucky he was to have a wife who knew her place in a world full of women trying too hard. I looked at him. Really looked. He didn't know I already had copies of the hotel receipts. He didn't know I'd spoken with one of the women. He didn't know she cried when I told her who I was. He didn't know the documents were already filed. I watched him chew his steak and talk about loyalty. I smiled, poured him more wine, and said, "You'll get what you deserve very soon." You always do. He laughed. Thought it was flirtation. I cleared the dishes. And 2 days later, when he came home from work, there was a manila envelope on the table. My signature. My lawyer's. Court date set. He called my name. I didn't answer. It was my sister's wedding reception, part 2. A delayed celebration with extended family, more guests, more speeches. He insisted we attend. Said it would be good to show face. Said people had been asking about us. Said we needed to remind everyone we're strong. He had no idea the reminder would come, just not the way he imagined. I wore red. Not his favorite. He said it was too loud, too attention-seeking. I wore it anyway. It was the only color that made me feel like I was awake again. He kissed my cheek at the door. Too firmly. Too rehearsed. Inside, the room buzzed. Glasses clinking. Laughter blooming in every corner. But all I heard was my own breath. Slow. Steady. My palms were warm, my heartbeat even. The woman who used to shake in his presence had gone quiet, not because she was scared, but because she was ready. The moment came quicker than I expected. His hand slid around my waist as the mic passed from one guest to another. People were making toasts. Sisters. Uncles. Friends. Then someone handed him the mic. He stood, confident as always. Spoke of love. Commitment. Loyalty. And then, with the arrogance only someone certain of your silence can muster, he said. The secret to a lasting marriage is to choose someone who needs you just enough to stay soft, There was laughter. Light clapping. Eyes turned to me. I stood. I didn't plan to. Not in that moment. But my body knew before I did, it was time. I walked slowly to the front of the room. He looked confused. He stepped back, offering me the mic with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I took it. Some of you know us as the perfect couple, I began. Always present. Always polite. Always smiling. Nods. But smiling and surviving aren't the same thing. Silence. I reached into my purse. Unfolded a single page, nothing dramatic. Just one bank statement. The one he never thought I'd see. The one with a wire transfer to a hotel in another city, booked in both his name and someone else's. I held it up. He said I was nothing without him. But the truth is, I was invisible beside him. Until now. You could feel the room hold its breath. I'm not making a scene, I said softly, looking directly at him. I'm creating distance. He moved toward me, whispering, "What are you doing?" I didn't flinch. What you never thought I would. I handed the mic back, walked past him, and out into the garden. I could hear the shift behind me, the murmurs, the hush, the first cracks in the image he built so carefully. I sat alone on a bench under the string lights. A breeze lifted my hair. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt free. He came outside minutes later, his voice low, angry. "You embarrassed me." I looked at him for the last time as his wife and said, "No. I revealed you." He stood there, furious and helpless. I walked away. The first morning after he left was the quietest sound I've ever heard. No footsteps pacing in the hallway. No phone calls behind a closed door. No keys dropped on the counter like punctuation marks to his arrival. Just stillness. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea I had made for myself, no sugar, just like I liked before I learned to like it the way he did. It was cold by the time I took the first sip, but I drank it anyway. That house, the one we built together, felt less like a memory and more like a stage after the curtain had dropped. I walked from room to room like someone returning to a place they used to live, familiar, but distant. The photos on the walls no longer told our story. They just held fragments of people we no longer were. I took them down that evening. Not with anger. Just with a soft decisiveness, the kind that comes from knowing something is truly over. The nights that followed were not brave. I cried. I forgot I had the whole bed to myself. I reached for my phone more times than I want to admit, not to call him, but to remind myself I didn't need to. But then, small things started changing. I began painting again. Slowly at first, like my hands needed to remember what freedom felt like. The first canvas was messy. The second, a little less. By the fourth, there was color again, in the room, in me. My sister came over with flowers. She didn't say anything. Just hugged me longer than usual and helped me hang my new artwork in the hallway. She looked at one of the pieces and whispered, "You look like you again." I applied for a job I never thought I could get, and got it. I traveled alone. Just once, just for a weekend, but it was enough. I sat by the sea, let the wind tear through my hair, and didn't take a single picture. I didn't need proof. I was there. I started laughing at things again. Genuinely. Loudly. People noticed. Old friends reached out. One of them, a woman I hadn't spoken to in years, said, "You sound taller now." That stayed with me. He tried to contact me twice. Once through email. Once through someone else. But I didn't open the message. I didn't need to hear what he had to say. Because I wasn't trying to rewrite our story. I was writing mine. And it was better. Simpler. Mine. I kept the red dress. Not as a souvenir, but as a reminder. That sometimes, the moment you choose yourself will feel like a war. But it's really a beginning. I walk slower now. Not because I'm lost, but because I'm not running anymore. I speak softer, not out of fear, but out of peace. And every time I look in the mirror, I don't see a woman who lost a husband. I see a woman who found everything else. Sometimes the loudest justice is delivered in silence. If you know someone building quiet STR gave, share it. Quiet healing is still healing.